The Open Podcast, where your host, Sander Mangel, and his guests share strategies and insights to help digital agencies thrive in a changing world.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show for digital agency leaders who want to grow smarter, sell better, and stay adaptable in a constantly shifting landscape. I'm Katie Wilson, Partnerships Manager and Enablement Specialist.
And I'm Sander Mangel, Solutions Architect, Consultant, and founder of Open Commerce.
So today, we're diving into a topic that can really sharpen your agency's focus and help to fuel sustainable growth. And that is your ideal customer profile, or to use an acronym today, your ICP.
So from what I understand, your ICP is basically a blueprint for the kind of client you want more of, and the one who values your expertise, the ones that fits your process and allows you to do your best work, right? When you're clear on that, everything gets easier in theory, like lead qualification, pricing, marketing, even hiring.
Exactly. But a lot of agencies I see have either skipped this step or they treat it more as like a one-time branding exercise. Whereas in reality, your ICP should really help to guide you and how to position your agency, who it is you're targeting, and also what kind of work that you say yes or where you say no to.
Now, Katie, don't think less of me, but I don't currently have a clearly defined ICP. To be honest, I don't even have an ICP or an inkling of an ICP for Open Commerce. So I'd love for you to help me build one. And I think this is going to be painful. You know, we might fight a little bit, but ultimately I believe we will come out stronger at the other end of it.
Of course. Well, that's good with me. So we're going to help to build it live here on the podcast today. But I think let's think about, have you ever found yourself saying like yes to every lead just because it came into your inbox? Or maybe you've I won't call it elevator pitch, but maybe you've really sometimes struggled to explain who your agency is really for. So that could be for someone that you've met at an event and you've not been able to quite kind of articulate that. So if those things are resonating with you, you'll definitely want to stick around. So what we're going to do is we're going to look to shape an ICP from the ground up, and we're going to use real questions and have some honest reflection. So let's start with the why. Sander, why haven't you locked down your ICP yet? Is there something that's maybe held you back? Like what could that be?
Well, first of all, Katie, I think I'm good at everything, right? But no, to be honest, I think we're a small agency, right? We do less than $1 million in turnover per year. Especially in this day and age, you cannot be too picky on the kind of projects you pick up. So it just felt like so hard to pin down what our ICP is, just given the limited number of projects that we do per year, given the limited number of leads we get in per year. I think that is what really held me back. And then I think there's also like the fancy of the moment. I get a client in, I'm in love with them, and everything is peachy, and then on to the next client. So I think it's me. It's all me. I just have a hard time picking.
I get it. And it is priorities and what's currently in front of you. But I think kind of going forwards, the more specific that we can get today to help kind of define that or come out with some kind of like common customers that you maybe have, it will really help you certainly going forward to attract the right work, also the right clients, and even from your partners to get better referrals if you can articulate your ICP to them. So what we're going to do now is to go through some questions. I want you to try and answer as honestly as possible, and then taking the information you give me, I'm going to try to put that together and to give you what we think is your ICP. How does that sound?
Yeah, sounds good.
Great. So thinking about your the clients that you've worked with in the past, a few questions to think about. Who out of those clients have you enjoyed working with the most? Where did you deliver the most value? So was that, not trying to guide you, but was that maybe in the consulting or actually delivery of the project? Where did you feel like you got the most value? And of those clients, do you think that there are any kind of common themes across those projects?
We're starting off quite challenging already. I think, without naming any names, I think recently I worked for one client for a longer period of time, interim job. I think it was one of the more challenging projects I've ever done. Maybe not even technically, but especially emotionally. It forced me to grow so much, and I think that I really enjoyed. I had an opportunity to explore new sides of myself, but most of all, I could deliver value by offering guidance on not even just the hard e-commerce tech side, but on business processes, on some software IT stuff, like some platform selection for even that weren't related to e-commerce. So I really enjoyed that, and I think looking at some other some other projects that I really enjoyed was as well with an agency I worked white label for, where I basically come in only to do the pre-sales part and then kind of hand it over to the project team afterwards. So we'll do some calls, we'll do some workshops, a discovery workshop, really honing in on the kind of business that the client has or lead has, and then defining what they need, how they need it, maybe making a platform recommendation and then bundling that up as a work package for the team, for their development team, and not even being involved in the project per se. And then I think the last one is a project that I'm not even that much involved in. There's even two of those where the open commerce team basically works almost embedded with the client, right? They're not a provider, they work embedded. There is some development involved there. So we are working with partners that we know and trust that will implement some of this stuff. What Open Commerce does is, again, project management, quality delivery, a big chunk of guidance for the client, right? So one of the cases is this very complex onboarding flow. We're recommending a lot on the technical side as well as on the business process, right? How should their onboarding and sales team use that tool, or what should they be asking to be compliant legally? So I think what really shines through for me is always being the trusted advisor for a client and being able to work embedded, right? Not just having one contact person, but if one of our team needs to talk to the CEO or the CMO or even someone working in the warehouse, they can do that. They can go out and contact that person directly. So I think that is where we deliver the most value, being that trusted advisor, and helping the client through what is arguably a project that they only do once, maybe twice in the company's lifetime.
Really good insights. And I think there's a clear thread in your work. You're probably, what it sounds like to me, you're probably most effective, but also the most fulfilled when you're acting as that strategic advisor, more so maybe the early stage of some of those projects. So whether that is white labeled or embedded, you're helping to shape the right tech and process decisions maybe before the execution begins. Would that sound about right?
Yeah, I think that resonates.
Okay, so what I would then say to, again, trying to go down the funnel to get to the ICP here is that if you're delivering the most value, enjoying the work the most when you're positioned as a strategic advisor at the early stages, so that could be guiding platform selection, refining the tech stack, shaping delivery processes, you're really thriving in what I would say those two key formats: white label pre-sales support, embedded consultant. So I'll take those two as the kind of the first step. So next question then, thinking along industry or verticals, do your clients, have they fallen into a certain sector, or is there a niche that your clients are in that maybe you understand really deeply? So is it maybe D2C, B2B, maybe broader like FMCG? And then is there an industry that you don't want to serve?
Again, very difficult question. I think in general where we excel, so we've served across all of the industries. However, where we excel best is primarily B2B, I think. And that's just because there's a whole lot more complexity, as well as those companies not being digital natives. Right? They are just less familiar often with setting up an e-commerce business, or even how to do fulfillment for e-commerce. So I think that is, again, where we really can excel. Maybe somewhat aligned to that is also D2C. So companies that are going to sell direct to consumer for the first time. Again, they're not digital natives, so they have some complexity they need to tackle also in terms of business processes. That's where we can add a lot of value. While we do have customers in pure B2C and fast-moving consumer goods, I think we can add less value in general just because those, I don't even dare to call them niches, but those markets are already well served. There are plenty of agencies that can do that. I think most of the solutions out there are tailor-made to those. So all the marketing solutions are tailored to those markets. So I think that's where we can add value less in general.
Okay, that's super helpful. So I would probably say then that we can start to shape the industry or maybe the vertical part of your ICP on probably the B2B commerce environments where clients do face that complex operational fulfillment challenges. You are also valuable to non-digitally native D2C brands. So there is still quite a lot of education and guidance needed. So your ideal clients really operating in those kind of two markets, particularly where digital commerce is still maturing and internal expertise is limited. And those businesses are really benefiting the most from your ability to simplify that complexity, to help shape foundational decisions, and then you're also able to kind of guide implementation from a strategic perspective. What I would say, listening to what you've said, is you're less suited to the fully mature sectors like FMCG, and that's because the e-commerce strategy is often already embedded. So there's less room for you to influence foundational choices.
Yeah, that's spot on. And I think even in B2B, probably we're less of a match with resellers or wholesalers, and maybe more so with, so I think where we added the most value recently is value added manufacturers or light manufacturing. There's different terms for that, right? But where the company takes an existing product and adds some value by either printing on top of it or bundling it or what have you, right? Because if it's just reselling, it's less complexity again. So I think, it keeps coming back to that complexity.
Completely. In terms of business size and structure, thinking about again those clients that you've worked with, what would you say is that the ideal either revenue range or company size going forward? So, for example, have they been typically quite lean, or are they more established, say, mid-market teams? And again, do they either have internal, either tech teams, internal marketing teams? So thinking around business size and structure and your ideal going forward, what's the ideal revenue size or company size? What do they currently look like today? And do they have internal teams?
Yeah, I think revenue size is probably the easiest to start with. It's likely somewhere north of 10 million. Right, simply because having a consultant is expensive. Well, I think it delivers the value that you put into it, but you need to have a certain revenue to be able to afford that. And I think once you hit the 100 million and upwards, probably they're gonna hire someone internally. So we might still cater to those clients, but it gets less for sure. Yeah. So I would say 100 million is the ceiling. Then I think in terms of organizational structure, we work best with clients that have a decent sized team in terms of marketing, product management, that kind of stuff, right? So we're probably not talking to a one-man company that is doing, the owner's doing marketing, content, what have you, all of that. So probably they have a bigger team, are a little bit more mature in their business process and what have you. They're already defining those, but they still need to scale them up. Basically, I think that is a good definition. What else? They might have an internal tech team that has served them well for years, but is now struggling to stay updated with the latest technologies. Or more often, they work with an agency which hasn't delivered on expectations, simply because there's a mismatch in those expectations. I would say, right? An agency delivers a product at the end of the day, right? You get a web shop. Well, a lot of these companies need a lot more hands-on consulting experience, hand-holding, and what have you. And I think last, we're talking generally about established companies in the mid-market, right? So we've worked with startups before. What we're finding is they just want a fast solution and they don't have time to invest a lot in finding themselves, defining process, what have you. So while we can add some value there, maybe in terms of smaller projects, like doing a quick discovery or what have you, it's definitely not the kind of client we prefer to have.
Yeah, perfect. listen, just relaying what you've told me then, I would say that open commerce is going to work best with established, more mid-market companies, particularly within that 10 to 100 million bracket in annual revenue. These are businesses that are mature enough to have in-house teams, PMs, tech leaders, etc., but they are, from what I've heard, they're lacking that deep e-commerce strategy expertise or the modern technology direction. So where you come in is to really help them scale up, provide that external guidance to help them make like smarter decisions or process decisions, and to help their internal teams to help them get them up to date. That would probably be what I would say is your ideal business size and structure.
Yeah, I think
perfect. So then thinking about like the challenges or the problems that they face, like have they come to you with specific challenges in mind? For example, it could be tech-led problems like replatforming architecture, or it could be that they've come to you because of business-led problems like scaling, conversion, slow dev cycles. What would you say have been the problems that they faced?
Predominantly it'll be tech-led, which quickly turns into business-led, right? Because they come to me, okay, we want to re-platform because our old shop is just crap, nothing works, we cannot execute fast enough, so help us re-platform. And then as we start to dig into that, we actually figure out that old platform is basically an ERP, web shop, BIM, all rolled into one. It has been powering their business for years. The real struggle is that instead of creating defined business processes, they just have been doing whatever the platform allows them to do. So the first step that we kind of need to do is define, okay, this is your business process. This part is due to a dysfunctionality in your platform, and this part is actually because it adds value to your company. So I think they come in tech-led, it transitions to business-led. They're often slow decision makers. Even though they might make fast decisions, they might even come back from those. They end up being slow decision makers because it's just all so complex and they're not sure what to do and what even the options are. These are companies that, while they do think that they just want to have execution, right? Build as a web shop, re-platform this, implement inventory management, that kind of stuff. Ultimately, what they're really looking for is that strategic partner that helps them grow to the next level.
Yeah. So what I'd say then is it's actually more that they're kind of uncertain. So yes, they might have come to you with tech, but it becomes business. So they know something's wrong, but maybe they're not quite exactly sure what it is that's wrong. So and if they are slow at making those decisions, it's not necessarily because of politics, but they're lacking on clarity on what options, or maybe lacking in confidence in actually what to do next. So from the sounds of things, you would probably get the most value where open commerce is able to guide that decision-making process through workshops, structured discovery. You're helping the teams understand the implications of their processes and what the different technology routes they can go down, help to give them more defined processes that actually align with their business goals. And then you can act as a translator, I guess, between the technical complexity and the business strategy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So in terms of how they're working today, do they typically value that collaboration, or do they just want you to come in and execute? Are they looking to open commerce as a long-term partner? Are they really looking to you as a quick fix?
So like I said, generally they are slow decision makers, even if they want to move fast. They have probably tried already to partner with agencies, which has probably had mixed results, whether that was a failed replatforming or just not feeling heard or valued by the agency. And I'm not even blaming agencies. Often it's a little bit of A, a little bit of B, right, in terms of how that relationship soured. But so often they're looking for a more long-term partner that can actually help them get out of this endless cycle of trying to spin something up and it's failing, right? And I think embedding is there the key trick for us. So being really part of their team, and that doesn't need to be full time, right? That can even just be 4 hours per week. But having access to board meetings or speaking to the right C-level people really helps us understand what the company's actually indexing on and not just what they're saying they are. I think that is very important for us. So I think, how do they work? They will be at a point where they feel that the old-fashioned agency relationships is no longer serving them.
Yeah. They need a long-term advisor. Yeah, where you can help embed with their team and build that trust and also bring them clarity around what needs to change, but also like how to do it. So if they've kind of typically tried working with agencies or even maybe freelancers before, they didn't get that strategic alignment. Now they need more of a collaborative partner, not just an executor. And that will really help them to break out of that reactive cycle and actually bring more of that long-term thinking into their roadmap. So I would say that you really to help them build that internal confidence, define direction, and become more decisive over time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the types of people that we tend to place are complementary, right? So this client with the complex onboarding flow comes to mind again. This client is all about moving fast, quick decisions, but then maybe not having the depth that they need to actually execute. And the project manager on that project, she's fantastic. She has a background in QA, right? So she's very thorough and stuff. She really thinks through. We had a consultant on there that basically went through the whole flow, mapped it out, made diagrams, would ask the client, okay, but what if this happens, right? So and that triggered the client to think. And while it wasn't always as easy, right? They had full confidence in us. They were willing to work with us. And ultimately, they valued the fact that we would call out that some stuff maybe wasn't that defined.
Yeah, completely. And it gave them probably that confidence going forward, just to challenge things like across the teams. No, I really like that. Last one then, because budget sometimes gets talked about last when it should come early, as we spoke on a previous episode. What would you say is kind of the realistic budget range for your services? Like, have you found that they're willing to pay for that expertise, or are they just kind of wanting cheap labor? And do they kind of get the value of what you offer? So what's the budget and the mindset?
Yeah, good point. I think looking at the hourly rate, we're definitely not the cheapest ones. And I think we, by design, try not to be, right? Because if we end up being the cheapest person in the room, we end up doing a lot of the work instead of actually consulting on work. I think in terms of budget, normally the first engagement we do with a client is relatively small. It might be a due diligence, it might be discovery sessions. We're talking anywhere from like K up to K, which is, it's money, but it's a relatively small investment. And that'll help us get a foot in the door and really show our value as advisors. And think after that, we talk less about budgets, but more about a burn rate. So we might work on a retainer. If we do a full project with one of our partners for development, we will actually ask the client, what is a healthy, sustainable budget per month for you, right? So let's not build against a fixed budget, but let's establish a burn rate at which we can kind of implement your new project. And those can range anywhere from, 8K per month up to 40, 50K per month. And that might vary throughout the phases of a project. But I think for us, bring this back to the ICP, is to have a client that is feeling comfortable with investing, let's say 2 to 15K upfront to get a very valuable report or a very, very valuable discovery session that tells them a lot about themselves, their company, their process, and their next step forward. As long as they're willing to invest in that and not see that as part of us trying to sell them a project, then that is the right client for us.
I like that. So what I would probably say is, to kind of round that out, is that you're not trying to necessarily be the cheapest option. And I think your clients understand that early strategic investment is going to lead to longer term structure, better decision making, clarity. So they are really valuing that expertise up front. So your clients really understand the value of expert consulting, even if their initial investment is modest. I would probably say that your clients are quite comfortable investing up front for that and not just get a free quote, and that they actually see advisory as more of a value add and not the cost to minimize. And then they also want a partner that they can trust long term in order to have that delivery and have that evolution. And they're also probably open to discussing quite realistic and healthy retainers. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. Agreed.
Okay. So to summarize your ICP, we're just going to go and revisit what you've told me above. Okay. So if we do an overview, you're going to be best working with established e-commerce businesses. So they're often B2B, they're digitally mature D2C brands, they're growing, they're hitting operational pain points, and they're looking for strategic direction beyond that execution. They are clients that have got internal teams, but they lack clarity, whether that's around architecture, platform process. They're ready for change, but they're unsure how to move on. So your best sectors are either B2B commerce with operation and fulfillment complexity, or they are D2C brands that aren't digitally native and need that foundational support. Your business size and structure is typically between 10 to 100 mil. They've got those internal PM, devs, marketers, but what they don't have is that wider strategic capability. And they're often likely to be stuck with either underperforming agencies or outdated processes. The problems that they face are typically starting with what they believe to be tech-led issues. As we've mentioned, either a slow site, need to platform, but those actual real problems are more systematic. So it could be that it's misaligned with things like poor architecture, limited flexibility, but they don't necessarily know what's possible. And their operations to this point have been dictated by the platform. So where you come in is to help them to define that scalable, integrated approach. You're often working with slow decision makers, not necessarily out of resistance, but due to clarity. They have tried partnering with agencies before, but they didn't get that strategic depth they're looking for, hence struggling to move on. So that's where you come in to help them as that trusted advisor to help steer them out of those kind of cycles that they're in. With regard to budget and mindset, they are willing to invest initially that 2 to 15K upfront for that structured discovery and road mapping, and then from there to move forward to a monthly retainer, circa 8 to 40K based on scope. They are valuing your clarity, strategy and implementation, and they want that confidence in decision making. So your ICP statement going forward would be clients that are mid-sized B2B or D2C. They're based in Europe who are ready to evolve their e-commerce strategy but lack that clarity. They have some internal resource, but they need expert guidance on whether that's platform architecture, delivery planning, and they value early strategic input and are open to long-term collaboration and are willing to invest to get to that next step.
That sounds like my dream customer.
Let's get working with those partners to get them to you. Now that we've kind of got to that, and I hope that was a useful exercise, what do you think was the hardest part of defining that ICP today?
That is a good question. Definitely a challenging one as well. I think it's just, so I think the challenge for me in defining the ICP wasn't that I didn't maybe have any answers or wasn't too clearly define who my ICP was. I think it was mostly just having someone ask the right questions. Because if someone asks you a broad question like what's your ICP or what are you good at, it just becomes an exercise in listing off everything you're good at and not making actual choices, right? And I think that was the biggest challenge for me.
Yeah. And thinking about either another agency or another business that also hasn't refined their ICP yet, is there any advice that you would give them if they've been holding off?
I mean, truth be told, in anticipation of this call as well as some other stuff that we've been working at Open Commerce on, I have been thinking a lot about this. I think first of all, it's important to start writing down what are you good at, what are you delivering on. Having an earnest review of all the projects you've done in the past and the value delivered. Were clients satisfied? 2 or 3 years down the line, did the clients actually still have value from what you delivered, right? Because there's a big difference between delivering and then going live and everybody's happy, and then 2-3 years down the line, did you actually build something that is robust and serve for a longer term? So I think we did that, which helped. And then just talking to someone else like you clarifying that ICP really helped. I would never have been able to do this by myself.
Do you think that there's any clients thinking about your existing merchants today, that is there any red flags, not naming names, that maybe they aren't a good fit? They're probably not your ICP?
That's an easy question. I recently did a due diligence report together with another consultant from the team. And I think in hindsight, the client just clearly wanted a quick fix and an answer to why is my current implementation partner not delivering what I wanted to deliver. I think the quick and dirty answer was you're not giving them what they need, plus you're getting what you're paying for, to be honest. And I think ultimately, while I was happy with the report that we delivered, and they found value in that, I don't think we delivered on their expectations, right? Which we don't want to deliver on even, because I will never go out and give a quick and dirty fix to anyone, like saying, cut your backlog in half and you're good. I don't feel in a position to be doing that.
Yeah, completely. And I think this is why, like, defining your ICP, it isn't just a positioning exercise or a marketing exercise, but it's actually about protecting your time and your results. You know exactly who you work best with, who you can, and that will help you to qualify your leads properly, like earlier on before taking them on, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. I think we're at the end and we've got your ICP.
Amazing. Are we going to share it with people?
Yes, I will. I'll put it in there. And I hope that was really helpful, just those questions or even bounce them off somebody else within the team as well, or as Sander has done, like with another party. I think that's really helpful. But thank you today for tuning in to another episode of the Adaptive Agency. We really hope that this episode has given you a clear framework to help you to define your own ICP, or at least the motivation to finally do it.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow the podcast, leave us a review, or share it with your team. And if you're working through your own ICP, let us know. We'd love to hear what your findings are.
Thank you. And we'll be back with another episode, and we will see you then.